Looking at the MK and the EFF policies, especially MK, to say they want to deprive power and hand it over to the traditional leaders, which is the royal houses, the kings, the monarchs, and what's not, and so forth. They also want to nationalize banks, nationalize mineral reserves, mineral resources. All right. On the other hand, EFF want to open border with this open border policy that they propose all over in South Africa, in African continent, if I could put it that way. So my question would be, do you think, guys, South Africa is ready, to go through the rough patch, to face some tremendous setbacks of famine, destitutes, and economy dropping drastically just simply because of all of those pattern of changes that's going to be like being established. Like, for instance, if we could probably try, let's create a scenario whereby, let's say, we were able to fight white monopolic capital successfully, and now we began to automatically the fight would be to probably chase these white entities, and try to empower black people and give them businesses and have access in funds in order to establish whatever business idea that they would like to venture out into. Because I think at some point, somewhere, somehow, the banks were not meant to give black people, especially loans, in order to establish entities, companies that will be rivals with these European entities as well. So, nationalizing banks, I think it could be one of the tools that could be used, in order to sequester, to support, in order to defend, to back up black struggling. That could work. And then my question is, how do we then inculcate this notion, this idea to South African citizens, to South African inhabitants, that they should stop buying from European entities? How do we go about that? Because some people will come with some debate or some arguments that, black owned businesses, they have an a huge price, in terms of the pricing of the things that they sell, the services that they provide. Like, for instance, if you could go maybe to eat in public space where there are like entities that are black owned, they say black people are very expensive. There has been a lot of discrepancy and disparity, between Pakistani shops versus black citizens who are inhabitants, the native of this country. If you contrast those shops that were black owned and the shops that are owned by Pakistanians, they say the price is literally very unfair. The aggregate in pricing, it's a mind-boggling. It's very outrageous. That is why especially South African people are still motivated to buy from the outsiders, because they argue with this notion of pricing, that the outsiders, they have what you might call this, they have a better pricing when it comes to things that they sell. And I literally agree with them. Black people, you could find out, if you could go to the street and maybe buy an apple or banana or some sort of vegetable, you see the pricing, it's very outrageous, it's a mind-boggling. Black people, in terms of pricing, they're very brutal. I wouldn't lie to you. So then the very same black people who are supposed to support these black owned entities, then they have grounds of dispute of saying black people, they don't play games with price. Their price is like skyrocketing. It's at the brink. They cannot afford to buy from another black people. And then what does that do in our societies, in our communities? It basically inculcates this repulsive notion of saying, therefore, the European brands, they sell things at a lower cost than as compared to black businesses. So what does that do? It then began to incentivize all citizens of this country to buy from the outsiders, and then by doing so, the money doesn't circulate within black hands. The money is departing, the money is vacating black hands, and then it goes back to white people. That very same money of black people, it goes out there over the window and support white entities. Then what happens? Then automatically that will beget to white people dominating us financially, you know, and then the very same black people who are trying to compete to be rivals with these white entities of white monopoly capital, and then they will then dominate, that they will get dominated by those white entities. So in terms of a black person plummeting drastically, it is patently absurd and grossly unfair. It is not okay, and I don't know what sort of information or education that we can inculcate, that we can impose and inflict to our black people, that they should just be unreasonable with the pricing. As much as the black people, they might claim and say that they sell at a higher price, they just need to be very dubious, if I could put it that way. Just be hubris with this excessive confidence to say, I don't give a damn. I don't care. I don't care whether black peoples have a high price, as long as the money from another black person goes to another black person. That what matters the most. The price is trivial. The pricing is trivial, as long as what is a prerequisite priority over this particular scenario is that the money goes from a black pocket to another black pocket. With that having said, we can have systems of edgery that will enable money to circulate within black hands. But it is not by surprise. According to pragmatics, if you go and buy from white owned entities, automatically these people will dominate us financially. Therefore, if you dominate people financially, you control them, you ordain them, you dictate, you constrain them, you prohibit them. Because money becomes the center of every move that you would ever anticipate to initiate. There's no other way around. So it is very, and I understand that at some point, somewhere, somehow, we have plethora of marginalized people who can not withstand those test of times to say whether black people are selling with a high price than as compared to European brands, but we will still withstand and resist white-owned entities and support our black businesses for the circulation of cash amongst black hands. They call it barter trading. Barter trading was good as well, but I think some people can bring about this argument that um, black people were not relying most of the time. If you could shift a little bit back in ancient times, black people were not relying on shopping for everything. Even if you could go to rural areas, even up to this day, you find out that some people, they buy less grocery because they can plant maize meal and be able to have pap at some point, somewhere, somehow. They have flock of cows, sheep, agriculturally, they can still survive without going to malls, to ShopRite and Checkers and Pick and Pay, to buy other items. They can be able to survive, with that cultural life, with that way of living. I think it could literally alleviate intrinsically the cost of going and going support these these white owned entities that at some point, somewhere, somehow, they oppress us because they began to legislate some laws that works against us.